Hey, what's up guys, it's Kelly, and today I'm sharing my favourite books that I read in 2019. If you find yourself enjoying this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, it really helps me out, and if you're new here and would like to see more of me, then please subscribe. So I think I actually managed to accidentally get this to about 20 books. It might be one or two off, but I'm pretty impressed with that. So how I do this is I just look at all of the books that I read in the year, so I go through my Goodreads list and basically I choose what sparks joy. So I pull out all the books where I just look at and instantly like something in me goes, yes, that was a favourite. And then I pull them all out and I make a video. So here it is, in no particular order except for the top two, which you guys can probably guess. So it does admittedly feel really weird calling this book a favourite because it was so difficult to read, but it was also such an exceptional book. It affected me on such a deep level and it was raw and visceral and horrific, but also I think it was easily one of the best books that I read this year. And I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and it's a book that I'll remember for a long time. It's a book that I think I will return to time and time again. I feel like because of the impact that it had on me, that even just thinking about it again now, because it's been quite a few months since I read it, and it's still bringing up so many emotions just thinking about it, which I think says a lot about how impactful this book was. So I think that it deserves a spot on this list regardless of how difficult it was for me to read, and that is What Red Was by Rosie Price. Also, when you consider it was a debut, and it's just wow. This was the book that I read that kind of got me thinking, hey, maybe I don't hate literary fiction anymore. Like, this reminded me how powerful literary fiction can be when the author actually tries to make you feel something rather than just using it to show off how clever they are. This basically follows a girl who is raped at a party and the aftermath of that, and her trying to piece her life back together, and the strain that it puts on her relationships, and the way that money and privilege affects situations like that. It's this completely harrowing, horrific journey that you go on with this girl, and it's raw and it's ugly and it's difficult to read. And even if you've never experienced assault, if you've ever experienced any sort of issues with mental illness, you'll relate to a lot of what she's dealing with. It was emotionally draining, but I couldn't put it down. That's a lie. I did put it down. The first time I started reading it, I was like, I don't think I'm in the space to handle this right now. I put it down. I came back to it when I was in a better place mentally, and then I was just completely compelled by it. At that point, I couldn't put it down. I had to finish it. I had to know her story. So if you're looking for something incredibly hard-hitting, incredibly difficult to read, but that is ultimately just incredible, I highly recommend this. Then a slightly less intense one, we have The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which you guys probably know I absolutely adored. This follows Josh and Lucy, who work in an office together and they hate each other. They're constantly just playing games with each other to annoy the other. Basically, their whole lives revolve around annoying the other person more than that person annoys them. Things kind of come to a head when they start competing for a big promotion, and Lucy realises that Josh is just getting into her head way too much, and the more that they compete, the more the real games actually begin. I loved this book so much. The writing was phenomenal. I mean, it's a contemporary romance, you're not expecting like phenomenal writing, right? But some of the descriptions, oh my goodness, were so beautiful, and the sex scenes were, there's some good stuff in here. It is very sexy, it is very steamy. Don't read it if you're just looking for like a cute fluffy contemporary. There is so much cuteness and so much fluff, but it's also super steamy, so if you're not into that side of romance, steer clear. But if you are looking for something that is on the sexy side but still has a really good story and actually has a plot, Enemies to Lovers Gold. I read The Malamander by Thomas Taylor, which I adored. This is a middle grade fantasy, and it's a little difficult to explain. It's set in this town called Erie-on-Sea. I have a finished copy of this somewhere and I don't know where it is. Anyway, story of my life. This is set in a small seaside town called Erie-on-Sea, and it's about this boy called Herbie Lemon, who is the lost and founder at this hotel in the town. So his job is to run the lost and found. When hotel patrons lose stuff, it goes for lost and found, and it's his job to then like find stuff for them when they come back for it. Until a girl called Violet arrives in his rooms one night and says that she is lost and she needs his help to find herself. Basically, she's looking for her parents and she wants Herbie's help to find them. On top of this, Erie-on-Sea has the legend of this creature called the Malamander, which is this mythical sea monster type thing. I kind of imagine it looking like the thing from The Shape of Water, but spiky. And this is this monster that supposedly, legend has it, lives in the town of Erie-on-Sea, and slowly but surely Herbie and Violet's adventure gets roped into the legend of the Malamander, and they start to wonder if perhaps the search for Violet's parents has something to do with, or the disappearance of Violet's parents has something to do with the Malamander as well. It's so cute, it's so charming. It gave me big Lemony Snicket vibes. It has the same kind of whimsical writing style and kind of clever, precocious kids that you can't help but love. It's so good. It's so good. I highly, highly recommend it. Then I'm including this as an honourable mention. I did actually read it in 2018, but because in 2018 I had already filmed my favourites video before I finished this book, it didn't get a mention, and I think it deserves one because I love it so, so much, and that is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This is phenomenal. It's amazing. It's perfect in every way, and I just loved it so damn much. This follows a man called Laszlo Strange, who is a librarian and is obsessed with the lost city of Weep. He's been obsessed with it his whole life he's spent dedicating to researching it, to finding out more about it. He knows like everything about the folklore, the legends, and it is his dream to one day visit Weep. His chance comes when a group of delegates from Weep come to his town and look for a group of people to come back to Weep with them and help them solve a problem. Laszlo is desperate to find out what happened in Weep, why it got cut off from the rest of the world, and the only way that he can know this is if he goes along. So he goes on this adventure, and it's just incredible. It's so magical. Laini Taylor's writing is so lyrical and so descriptive. Like, every second of this book you can see, touch, smell, taste everything that is going on. You completely feel immersed in the world, immersed in the story. I love the way she does characters. Like, Laszlo could get it, not gonna lie. He is the most Ravenclaw of Ravenclaws, except for another person on this list who he would totally be best friends with. It's just so good, and you have to read it if you want like really beautiful lyrical fantasy. Like, it's high fantasy technically, and that they go off to this magical place and it's not set in our world and all that jazz, but it's so accessible and it's not actually that magical. So if you can just get past a couple of things, if you can suspend your disbelief for one or two big things, everything else just kind of falls into place, and it's just so good. So good. I finally got Muse of Nightmares, so I'm very excited to finally see how this duology ends. I also read and loved A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. I still need to watch the series, actually. I only got about halfway through the first season and loved it because Matthew Good, oh, that is really dusty. This is basically Twilight for adults. Like, it is ridiculously angsty, and it's about this lady called Diana who's a historian, and she's doing research in the Bodleian Library at Oxford one night when she comes across this ancient alchemical manuscript. Diana is aware that she's descended from a line of witches, but she has absolutely no interest in being a witch and using magic. It's not for her, but she is very aware about the fact that magical creatures exist in the world. Basically, they are divided into three factions: witches, demons, and vampires. And as she discovers this manuscript, she realizes that all three of these groups have been desperate to get their hands on this manuscript for centuries. So she goes from not wanting to have anything to do with the magical world to being sucked right into the centre of it, and right into the centre of a centuries-long feud. On top of that, obviously, she goes and falls in love with a vampire, which, to be fair, I would have fallen in love with Matthew too, but, like, for reals. Now on top of all of this, she's gone and fallen in love with someone who's supposed to be her enemy, and it's all very angsty and very dramatic, but it's wonderful. Also, the writing in this is lovely. There are moments where it's just too much, like it almost gets too flowery or too descriptive, which, I gotta be honest, is why it wasn't quite a 5-star read for me, but like on an emotional level, I adored this book. It got me right in the feels. It has like the angstiest slow burn romance. Oh my goodness, it takes them like 500 pages even to kiss, and it's just so much angst, so much drama. This is why I say it's like Twilight for adults. It's just all the forbidden love and just all the tension, and it's so good, and I really need to read book 2. Then I also loved Are We All Lemmings and Snowflakes by Holly Bourne. Our Penguin Kids rep has been saying to me for like a year, since I met her basically, that I need to read Holly Bourne. So when I got the opportunity to get a Holly Bourne book for free, I was like, cool, I'll read it, and I did, and I loved it so much more than I was expecting to. It was completely not what I was expecting, but it was so, so good. This is about a girl called Olive, I think? Yeah. It's about a girl called Olive who has very severe mental health issues. She has been diagnosed, but she doesn't want to know her diagnosis, so she's not entirely sure what her problem is. She just knows that there's something wrong with her. She's tried all the traditional things, she's tried therapy, she's tried medication, nothing's really sticking. And then she gets a chance to go to Camp Reset, which is basically like this very fancy wellness retreat, but specifically for teenagers. So she goes there, she is finally surrounded by people who also have lots of mental health issues, and as she starts making friends, they start to think maybe it's not them that are messed up, maybe it's the world that is messed up, and that if the world gets fixed, maybe they could be fixed. I just loved this book so much. It is such a raw, frank look at mental health, and I related to it so much of the time, which actually made it quite a difficult book to read at times, because it really opened up some old wounds for me, but at the same time it was always really fun, and I think she needs to be in the hands of every teenager, because I think that her writing style and her storytelling style is such that it's not gonna make teens kind of shy away from reading about mental health. They'll read it because it's really enjoyable, but also it'll help like unearth some hard truths about themselves, even at 22. So all around, this was just a phenomenal read. I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to read books about mental health issues, and the rest of her books seem to be kind of along similar lines, so she's just incredible. This whole book is aiming to make the world a kinder place, and I'm all about that, so please go read Holly Bourne. Then I read Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. Loved this. I think pretty much most people know what this is about, but this is basically about a woman who gets pregnant with the Antichrist. And I can't tell you much more than that, because that is basically the plot of the book, short of giving you huge spoilers, but it's really good. It's supposed to be scary, it's not. I found it quite amusing at times, but the writing is excellent, and I really, really loved this. Highly recommend if you're looking for something that feels like horror but isn't actually scary and is just a really good time. Then I need to talk about easily the 2 best YA contemporaries of the year. I don't care that I didn't read that many. These 2 are the best, okay? They're the best. One is The Boy Who Steals Houses by C.G. Drews. I was so hyped for this book, and it did not disappoint. This is about a boy whose name I do not remember. So this follows a boy called Sammy and his autistic brother Avery, who've been pretty much abandoned by every adult in their life. They're having to fend for themselves, look after themselves, and one of the ways that Sammy does that is by breaking into houses. He does steal a little bit to make ends meet, but mostly it's about stealing the house itself. It's about having a place that feels like home for the night, and just talking about it breaks my heart, but he has a whole system set up for this. You know, he knows exactly which houses to steal for the night. But one night he steals the wrong house. He goes to sleep, and when he wakes up, the house is full of noise, and his whole body is just like screaming, oh shit. As he's trying to get out of the house unnoticed, people obviously keep noticing him, but this is a really big, chaotic family. Some of the kids have just come back from a camping trip, they have friends with them, and everyone just assumes that he kind of belongs to someone else. So he ends up getting invited to stay for lunch, so he kind of just keeps spending time with his family, keeps becoming friends with them, and along the way starts falling in love with Moxie, who is one of the daughters. The only problem is he's still, unknown to them, sleeping in their house at night, and he's constantly struggling with the fact that these people have been so good to him, so kind to him, but he's lying to them every day. This book takes you on such a roller coaster of emotions. Sammy is such a broken little bean. He has so many issues, but he is the sweetest thing in the world. Avery just breaks my heart. Like, everything about this book just is gonna make you feel so many feels. It's can be really happy. It has moments of being so sweet and so pure and so happy, and then right after that it just like rips your heart out and stomps on it. And CG Drews, if you follow her on Instagram or Twitter, you'll know she's just like here for making people cry. But these boys, like, these are my children, and I just want to protect them and make them safe in a harsh, ugly world. And just I'm so desperately hoping that she writes a sequel, because I need more in my life. It's very real lifey. You know, things don't get all wrapped up perfectly in a bow at the end. It's not all sunshine and roses. It's real life, and I can't recommend this enough. Super important thing that I also wanted to say about this: CG Drews is autistic, so the autism rep in this is own voices, which is fantastic because autism rep is so often horribly stereotyped, so the autism rep in this is amazing. For Avery, and although it's not canon, I'm pretty sure Sammy is on the spectrum somewhere as well, because he definitely has some of the symptoms. Yeah, so if you're looking for a book that has really great own voices, autism rep, take The Boy Who Steals Houses. Then I read Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry, and I adored this. I wasn't expecting to love this anywhere near as much as I did. In fact, I was a little bit wary of reading it. I had heard Emma Books say so many good things about this, but I was worried it was going to offend me, so let me tell you what it's about so that I can explain why. This is about a boy called Michael who is an atheist but gets sent to a Catholic school. And this is just like his worst nightmare until he gets there and realizes that he might not be as alone as he thinks. So he meets this group of kids. One of them is Jewish and gay. One of them doesn't really have this whole religion thing figured out yet, and he's pretty comfortable with that. One of them is polytheistic, and one of them, Lucy, is the ultimate good Catholic girl, except she wants to be a priest. And together, this group of outcasts are Heretics Anonymous, and they invite Michael to join them. So there is an incident that happens at school that causes Michael to encourage them all to stop just being this secret little club and become kind of underground activists and start doing things that will get people to listen to them, get people to wake up and not keep accepting things blindly. But a prank goes way too far and threatens to destroy the safety not only of their club but of all of them. So I am Catholic, and I was really worried that this book was just going to be very anti-religion, and it's not at all. It's such a good measured look at being religious and not being religious. It gives the pros and cons of both sides of the argument, and it very much preaches a message of acceptance. I mean, all of the people in Heretics Anonymous have very different belief systems, and they're still such good friends, and it preaches such a message of you can believe what you want to believe and I can believe what I want to believe, and we can still love and accept each other even though we disagree on something very fundamental, which I think is really important, especially in our current age. And actually, I felt like being Catholic made me enjoy this even more, because there were many moments in this book that I found super relatable. Like, I love being Catholic, and I love all the tradition and all the theology, and although I have a lot of faith in what I believe in, there are aspects of my faith that I get sound completely batshit crazy to anyone on the outside. So like, yes, I truly believe that during Mass, bread and wine becomes the actual body and blood of Christ, but like, I get that sounds 100% insane to someone who doesn't have the faith that I have, you know? So things like that, there were so many moments in this book that I laughed out loud because I related to so much of what happened, so many things that people said. So I think that if you are Catholic and you can handle having some fun poked at your religion, you should definitely read this, because I think you'll get even more out of it than someone who is another religion or isn't particularly religious at all. But I think that anyone can still read this and enjoy it because it's fantastic and it has very important messages. Then I want to mention the Grisha Trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. These were some of the first books that I read this year. I buddy read them with Hayley from Hayley Marie Reads, who I love, and these were just so good. I'm just going to talk about the series as a whole. Basically it is inspired by Russian mythology and Russian folklore, and it's set in a fantastical version of Russia where there are these people called Grisha who have abilities that are, I forget what it's called, it's something sciences, it's not like small sciences, I think it's called the small sciences, and it's all these people that have these abilities but they are almost grounded in science. So it's people who are able to like manipulate wind or manipulate light or manipulate earth or fire or manipulate the way that someone looks or heal someone, but everything does have an almost scientific basis to it. So like, you can't manipulate fire unless fire's already there. You can't manipulate light unless light is already there. Things like that, which I really enjoyed. I love the magic system in these books, and Leigh Bardugo's writing is just incredible. It's difficult to explain really what the series is about because there are so many ups and downs and just so many things going on, so that's pretty much all I'm going to tell you guys about that. But I loved the Grisha Trilogy and definitely I'm looking forward to finally reading Six of Crows this year. Then, oh my gosh, I read The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. Guys, I loved that book so freaking much. Honourable mention also goes out to Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater, which I listened to the audio of this year and also loved, but like, The Scorpio Races was just on another level. Maggie Stiefvater just made me believe in teen books again, like not YA, not books that are aimed at, you know, 16 to 25-year-olds, books that are aimed at like 12 to 14-year-olds. She just made me believe that they can be as exceptional, as wonderful, as perfect as books that are written for older people. It was so good. Basically, the main focus of this is the Scorpio Races, which are races that are held every year on the 1st of November, also my birthday, just putting that out there, and it's these horse races that happen on the beach in this small town on this tiny island. The catch is that a lot of people, in an attempt to be the best and to be the fastest, use Kapal-ushka or Kapal-ushka, I forget which one it is. One of them is the plural and one of them is the singular, but they're these water horses that they pull out of the sea, and they're very fast, that's true, but they're also extremely violent and extremely aggressive. So the story follows two main characters, Puck and Sean, who... Puck is this like feisty little... I don't even know how to describe her. She's just like super feisty, and her parents have both died, leaving her and her brothers to fend for themselves, basically. And she is determined to win this race because it means that she'll be able to keep her family home, which is going to be repossessed if they can't pay for it. And our second character is Sean, who is pretty much the only person on this island who is able to tame these wild water horses. He's incredibly gifted with horses, and he has won the Scorpio races every year for like the last couple of years. And the two of them start getting close, start getting friendly, kind of team up, all the while knowing that ultimately things are probably going to end in disaster because they can't both win these races. Guys, the suspense, the angst, and just Maggie Stiefvater again proving that she is the queen of slow burn romance. Like, these two, the most like, oh my gosh, I'm dying from the intimacy and the cuteness and the love moment in this book was when he touched her wrist. I think there was like one kiss in this book, and it was still one of my favourite romances that I read this year. It just, oh my gosh, I can't. So many feelings. I just loved it so freaking much. Even though, I mean, I do actually think that touching someone's wrist, I think that I find wrists incredibly intimate body parts, so that's probably why the wrist thing was such a thing for me. But just the writing, the atmosphere, the characterization, the romance, all the relationships, even like the way that she writes just kind of platonic relationships and family relationships, just everything was so good. So good. Can't recommend that enough. I thought I loved the Raven Boys. I mean, I love the Raven Boys, I do. But I read the Scorpio races and I was just like, Raven Boys who? It's so much better than I ever imagined. So good. Then I read Finale by Stephanie Garber, the conclusion to the Caravel series, which obviously I can't talk about a lot because spoilers, but what you guys do need to know is I adored this book. It was the perfect conclusion to the trilogy for me. I loved it, and you need to read Caravel if you haven't already. Stephanie Garber, again, just is amazing at world building, at characterization, super good at romance as well. Like, my heart could not take it. So good. Then, for some reason, I can't find my copy of The Goldfinch, but I read that this year. Loved it. Also a difficult one to explain because it really is just a coming-of-age story, but it's about this boy called Theo whose mom dies, and through a sequence of events he ends up stealing a priceless painting called The Goldfinch. He keeps this painting with him as the only thing that reminds him of his mother. It's like his one bright spot in this world of darkness and chaos. He gets shunted around between guardians, and for the first like 500 pages of the book you really are just reading about Theo growing up, Theo coming to terms with his life, Theo having some serious substance abuse issues. It's a whole ride, it really is. And then at the 500 page mark Theo becomes an adult, and we see finally the repercussions of him stealing the Goldfinch as a child and how that starts to draw him into the criminal underworld, the criminal art underworld. So good. The writing is phenomenal. I love Donna Tartt. She became a favourite author of mine this year. Cannot recommend this book highly enough. Then I also loved Machines Like Me by Ian McEwan, which is an alternate history set in the 80s, and basically our AI technology is a lot further along than it is in the real world, and science has gotten to the point where they've developed fully synthetic human-like beings. So this man buys one, and basically the book is just him and this thing interacting and how his relationship with this thing, his name is Adam, they were called Adams and Eves, how his relationship with Adam starts to kind of take over his life, how synthetic humans are probably not a thing that we should be trying to do, because why are we making things that are smarter than us? It's just dumb. The book grapples a lot with issues and questions like, what makes someone human? At what point do these beings start? At what point should we start treating them like humans? Should we ever treat them like humans? Should they have rights? Should they, like, what does human life really mean if you can create something that looks, sounds, feels, acts, behaves, thinks like a human? Then what's the difference between this thing made of plastic and me? So it grapples with a lot of really serious issues that we should be thinking about. It asks questions that we need to be asking while scientists are off in labs making people. But anyway, this book was like an episode of Black Mirror, but in book form and written by Ian McEwan, so writing was just on point. I love Ian McEwan's writing. You guys probably know Atonement is one of my favourite books of all time. It's just so good. So yes, highly recommend that if you're looking for a very literary sci-fi book. And then lastly, we have my two favourite books of the year. You can probably guess what they were, but at the number 2 spot we have The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I have waxed ad nauseum about this book because it is so phenomenal. This follows a group of classics students under the tutelage of an eccentric professor at an elite New England college as they learn new ways of thinking, new ways of understanding the world that are kind of inspired by and mirror that of the classic Greeks. So the main character is a man called Richard Papin, a young man, I should say, called Richard Papin, who comes to this college and is like desperate to get in with these classic students, and eventually does. And in doing so is drawn into this world of intrigue, of murder, of blackmail. He's just drawn into this web of utter chaos. This is a literary thriller. It has the pacing and the excitement of a thriller, but with the most incredible atmospheric, lyrical, descriptive writing you ever did read. Loved it. So much. And lastly, if any of you are surprised at how are you even here, because my top book of the year was The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I've been saying that since like June, and I was not wrong. Nothing has surpassed this book for how much I love and adore it. So this follows a college student called Zachary Ezra Rollins, great name, who, by the way, is the other most Ravenclaw of Ravenclaws, who would totally be besties with Laszlo Strange, just putting that out there. That's a fanfic I need to read. He finds this book when he's doing research in the library, and it contains a story about him that no one could possibly know, a story from his childhood that he has never told anyone before. He obviously becomes super intrigued, but the only clues he has as to where this book came from are a bee, a key, and a sword, because there is no record of this book being brought into the library. It just seems to have appeared there. He follows these clues to a literary themed party in New York, and from there gets pulled into this world of underground secret societies and an underground labyrinth full of books and magical people and a sea, like a magical sea, and this place where stories have so much power, where books have so much power, where there are, and this book is books within books within books, and stories within stories within stories, and half of the characters we meet we've previously met in excerpts from stories throughout the book, and as you read it and as more of it unfolds, you start piecing together all these wonderful pieces of the puzzle, and the whole thing comes together like the most glorious crystal spiderweb of organised chaos. This whole book is a love letter to books and stories, and people who love books and stories, and the people in books and stories, and how books have the power to change us. And I mean, every reader knows that books are something magical, but in this book, they really are magical. And it's just amazing, and I love it, and you have to just read it and buy it, and getting a little overexcited, but you have to read this book because it is perfect in every way. Also, 10 out of 10 would not recommend to people who need plot in their books. There is not much of a plot here, okay? Yes, that is what everyone on Goodreads is complaining about. There is no plot, it's just characters being fantastic, developing relationships. If you can deal with that, if you love character-driven books, please read it. Please read it and love it, and then come talk to me about it. So that is it. Ultimately, I didn't end up talking about 20 books, I don't think, because as I was going through, was like, do I need to talk about this one? Do I need to talk about this one? So I did cut a couple from the list at the last minute. But nonetheless, I hope that you enjoyed this. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of any of the books that I mentioned, if you read them this year, or if you've read them previously. I'm not gatekeeping. Also, let me know what your favourite books of 2019 were, and also feel free to leave me links to your videos discussing such if you have made them, because I would love to go and watch them. Thank you very much for watching and supporting this long ass video. If you are still here, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all again very soon. Bye!
My life is grounded in a firm routine of coffee, sleep, and work. I am not boring, I just stick to what I know.